Good morning, sir. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate all you guys for tuning in to the MHP. We have a wonderful guest today. I'm super excited, Dr. Michael Pariser, a gentleman that forwarded the book from Mr. Robert Glover. It's called No More Mr. Nice Guy, The Hero's Journey, subtitled A Step-to-Step Guide to Becoming an Integrated Male. I like that word. So personally, let me be transparent. I read the former's book. I read the actual book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. And it wasn't, usually it was prescribed to me by my therapist at the time. But while I was looking for the book she prescribed, I was in a marriage at the time, and she said I need to read the book Boundaries. It was perfect, great book, great read. Everyone should read it. But on Amazon, when I was looking for the book, the No More Mr. Nice Guy book popped up, and I was like, that title struck a chord, because as a young man growing up in America, you know, we all know the phrase, nice guy finishes last. So it struck a chord while he would write a book trying to get men not either. Before I read the book was why I thought, why is he trying to get men not to be a nice guy? And then my thought was, why do men think being a nice guy is good? And of course, this is in the realm of dating, right? Bought the book, read it, fell in love with it. Not gonna lie, I haven't read it for a while because I kind of do notes. I take notes and I highlight in books and whatnot. And so let's start off with, I would like you to define, most people don't know, define what actually is a nice guy, and why would he write a book trying to either explain or get guys to know you shouldn't be one?
So, a nice guy, we're not talking about people who are kind of nice at the core. We're talking about people who believe that being self-sacrificing, by putting other people's needs in front of their own, by being superficially nice, by being always a good boy, they will get everything that they're looking for in life without ever having to ask for it, especially the love that they're looking for, and that they will therefore live a happy and problem-free existence. And of course, this is wrong. It doesn't work this way. They simply get screwed up because they try that and it doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, they only have one trick. It's the hammer that, you know, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Well, they only have a hammer, so they just keep hitting harder. And guess what? It wasn't a nail. It was, you know, a wedge or a screw or a staple, and the whole thing is turning out to be a mess. And so then they're lost. They fall into depression or despair, and they can't figure out like what to do next. And so that's why Robert Glover wrote this book, the original book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. And it's how I came to kind of work with men in this way. Like you, I read his book, I fell in love with it, and I did a workshop with him when he was a therapist up in Seattle. And we became friends. And I started doing monthly workshops for nice guys, and I started treating a lot of nice guys in my private practice. And then one day, it occurred to me that I was hearing a common complaint. And the complaint was this. The guys who read Dr. Glover's book would say, boy, you know, he just like nails it. Like, he gets me. It was like he was like following me around and taking notes in order to write his book. So everybody says the same thing. It is, boom, nails the syndrome. But what do I do about it? How do I stop being a nice guy? And he's got some exercises in there, but they're a lot sketchier than you might hope. So one day I said to Robert, he had by then become a personal friend. And I said to him, Robert, you got to write a workbook to go along with your book. And he said to me, I don't want to. So I said, I'll tell you what, I'll write it with you. And he said, I don't want to. You write it. So I said, okay, I'll write it. So I wrote it. And it started out being just like a workbook for his book. I thought, okay, I'll take a couple months and I'll just try to create some exercises. But little by little, it started getting bigger. And it included some ideas from Joseph Campbell's book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, especially the idea of the hero's journey. And then it also started kind of utilizing some stuff from my own practice. And then when Robert read it, he read the original kind of rough draft, he said, you need examples. Well, I thought a couple of examples. No, he said, you need an example for every exercise. So now the book it got bigger, but it got a lot more useful. So there's a chapter for every chapter in his book, plus a couple of extra chapters. There's 4 to 5 exercises for every chapter. There's examples for every exercise. So it can take you literally step by step through the process of shifting from being a kind of a clueless nice guy into who's just trying to be, kind of make everybody happy, to being someone who can stand up, be a man, make himself happy without kind of riding over the wants and needs of other people.
So it's a comprehensive, it's a workbook, so it's written in a way to be comprehensive so that they can actually apply it in day-to-day life.
And it's a working book. In other words, it's not a reading book. You wouldn't sit down, curl up with this book at night, with a cup of hot chocolate. You would use this book in conjunction with No More Mr. Nice Guy. And you would do the exercises and you would do them slowly over time. And so that little by little, you kind of building yourself into the man you want to be.
Okay. So I'm going to keep it streamlined, but I want to ask about, you say you got a private practice. So how many, I don't want to keep calling them nice guys, but everything's an evolution, right? So at one point you are a nice guy. Have you ever encountered some nice guys in your personal, I know as therapists and psychologists, you can't give up confidential information, but how does this resonate with you as in your private? How many of nice guys have you encountered and you incorporated this in your forwarded workbook as in practical things that actually work, you've seen you work through?
Well, first of all, I am one. And so is Robert Glover. That's how we came to do this. He wrote this book because he's a nice guy. And then he started, once he realized he was a nice guy, he started running groups up in Seattle. And he was running 4 or 5 groups a week at the peak. And then the guys in the group said, you got to write a book. So he started writing a book, and he'd never written anything before. It took him 10 years to write his book. So he finally wrote the book. And when I read it and started working with nice guys, I started doing a monthly workshop, which I've been doing for the past 8 years. And it's a kind of a drop-in workshop. And then I started working with a lot of nice guys individually in my practice. I've since stopped because I've stopped seeing individuals pretty much to write the book. And once I wrote the book, I built a couple. I'm building my 3rd group based on my book. And so what's happened is these are kind of interesting structurally. A lot of groups are free form process, or they are like single issue groups, like we are introverts. Let's all talk about our introversion. But this is a group that's actually following the book exercise by exercise and kind of going through. So it's neither completely open-ended, nor is it, an 8-week group. I figure it'll be about each group. Each group is a hero's journey, and each group is going to take about a year, 14 months to kind of get through the whole book. And hopefully by the time we get the men from one end to the other, they'll be very different from when they started.
Okay. So so there's a two-sided of Mr. Nice Guy. There's a thing for it for men and thing for it for women. And when you hear about nice guys, women have automatically defined, it's from what I've heard and simply what I know, the nice guy is the guy who plays nice. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing to get what he wants. But as you explained it, it's not that simple and that surface. It's more of a psychological play or something that's happened probably in a childhood as a man grows up in. So for me, I'll be transparent. The reason why I was a nice guy and other nice guys, I didn't come from a single parent home, but it felt like that. My dad wasn't really present. And so for most time, as I grew up, my mom had a hard time with her husband. And so she chose her children to be her husband, right? She had 3 boys. And then, the whole mama's boy. Women love to throw that out there, but it's like, you can't comprehend our plight, and where it's like, me grew up in a single my home, was like, yeah, I'm a mama's boy. It was just me and my mom in this small studio apartment. She's sitting here trying to raise me. So don't dismiss that. But that's kind of was my dynamic, and that's how I came to be a nice guy. It's me trying to appease my mother. It's me having this thing of not wanting my mom to struggle, me trying to make her happy, make her laugh, and so on and so speak. And when you grow up as a man, you think that's what women want or need. It's kind of have this savior complex of like, oh, I need to come and show you that I'm different or what have you. But what's the pros and cons of, like, after you answer this one, you get to what you've seen is the underlying cause of being a nice guy, but what could be some pros and cons? Like, let's put it up in the air and let's see if we can find a gray area of being a nice guy, so to speak.
Well, the pros are, look, everybody has a personality, and everybody's personality is organized in a certain kind of a way. You and I may be organized as nice guys, although we're organized as different kinds of nice guys. And there's more than one kind. But there are people who are organized as badasses, and there are people who are organized as angry men, and there are people who are organized as leaders, and people who are organized as followers. There's lots and lots of different kinds of personality organizations, right? So the nice guy personality organization, the pro is that they tend to get along with a lot of people, particularly in the beginning. The nice guy is a nice guy. I mean, people like to have him around, right? Okay. And unlike somebody who, people who are negative and down, or people who are always bristling and angry, I mean, those guys are not so much fun to have around, right? So, but the nice guy, hey, you invite him to dinner, he always brings a bottle of wine or makes food. If you say, gee, I need help cleaning out my garage, he's right there, or cleaning it, like he's helping, he's being good. Where the nice guy fails tends to be in intimate relationships. He fails himself, and he tends to fail his partners. So he fails himself Robert Glover has an online course he teaches called Nice Guys Don't Finish Last, They Rot in Middle Management, because they're very helpful, so they tend to get promoted up to a point, but they don't have their own vision because they were raised like you were to make somebody else happy. So they know how to make somebody else happy, but they don't know how to create their own vision. They're not great artists or innovators. They're great helpers. And so they fail themselves because they kind of get stuck halfway. Then in intimate relationships, they tend to turn their partners into their mothers. So they can't say, honey, let's go have sushi tonight. All they can say is, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? They can't say, I want to see the Avengers movie. They can say, what movie do you want to see, honey? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And it is very hard for nice guys to kind of stand up, be honest, be themselves, say what they want, say what they're looking for, and kind of stand in the vulnerability of their own desires.
So when you said that, an interesting point, and I did that. And the reason why is because, again, everything stems from childhood, how you're raised. My dad is a man he's foreign, he's from Haiti. He's from Port-au-Prince, Haiti, I should say. And so that culture is so, in today's world, it would be misogynistic. It's so hardly driven of man does. This man goes kill food, comes back, woman cook food, man eat. That type of world. And I saw that growing up, and I saw how distraught my mom was. And I literally said out of my mouth as a teenager, I don't want to be him. I don't want to be like that. And so but I swung the pendulum. I went so left on the spectrum, I became a nice guy. So my question to you is, and especially with today's time in 2021, post the Me Too movement, and it did have to happen, how could a man in today's time either date, court, or be with a woman and be either confident, be in himself, and be directive without a woman saying, you're misogynistic, you're sexist? I can make my own decision. You don't have to ask me, or you don't have to tell me, I'll tell you. I'm struggling, I will be transparent. Hey, I'm the number one thing I'm struggling with in today's time. I'm not dating, but just like speaking with the new age woman, young millennials, it's like, that's the hardest. I don't know. So how can a man be a so-called man in that relationship with a new age woman?
All right. So that's a great question. And what I hear is I hear the problem in one word that you used, which was directive. And what that says is you may be suffering with a false dichotomy. There's either she's directive or you're directive. And that's not how it works in a successful relationship. Nobody directs. You don't need a director. Let's say you and I are in some kind of relationship or partnership, okay? Yeah. And it's time for us to go to dinner. It's my favorite metaphor, right? I could say to you, what do you want? What do you want? And you could say, I want Italian food. I go, okay, great. And we have Italian food. And I could do that every night. If I'm a nice guy, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, what do you want? And whatever you want. And I'm going to be really helpful about it. Oh, I know this great Italian restaurant. They just opened it around the block. I hear they have amazing lasagna. Okay. So that's the nice guy approach. The asshole approach is I want Italian food. Get your clothes on. Get your clothes on. We're having Italian food. Okay. Now, what's the alternative? The first one is the passive nice guy. The second one is the aggressive asshole. Okay? All right. What's the alternative? The alternative is called assertiveness. Assertiveness is not aggressiveness. In assertiveness, I say what I want. You say what you want. I can honor my desires. I can honor your desires. And then we can go from there. So I say to you, you know, I hear there's this great new Italian restaurant that opened around the block. I'm jonesing for lasagna. Let's go have lasagna tonight. Okay. I've just put out what I want. That doesn't mean you have to agree with me. It doesn't mean you have to do it. You don't have to agree. You don't have to like it. I am open to hearing no as an answer from you. I'm open to hearing yes. I'm open to hearing anything you have to say. So you may say, okay, then we go have Italian food. You may say, hey, I'm not in the mood for Italian, or I heard that the new place is terrible, but let's go to Vito's. We always like Vito's. Okay. You could say, I'm not in the mood for Italian. How about Chinese? Well, I'm not in the mood for Chinese. Now what do we do? So I could say to you, let's have Chinese tonight and we'll do Italian tomorrow. Or let's try the new place today and we'll have Chinese tomorrow. Or let's see if we can find an Italian Chinese restaurant. Or let's go to the food court and you can have Chinese and I'll have Italian. Or let's bag the whole thing and go out for Siberian food. Or let's bag the whole thing and stay home and cook a steak. Once we each put our desires out, it's only a question of negotiating from there. So nobody's directing. Mm-hmm. We are both putting out what we want in an honest way, which I call reanimate. We reanimate our desire, we express our desire, and then we talk from a place of honest desire.
I could have definitely used that in my
your last relationship.
In my marriage. I used to be a bad, I've just recently become a better executor. And so I know all this. I had a therapist for 3 years and I'm currently looking for a new counselor, but I know a lot of stuff intellectually and I'm understanding my repressed trauma and psychologically, but it's like execution because it takes practice. Like you have a full group of men and you said it's going to take months up to a year. Like it takes a while, but I get frustrated with myself because I'm like, I know I could be better. I know I could upgrade because therapy is one of the best things. Once you see the growth, once you see you intellectually understand things different, your perspective goes different. I try to rush that, but I had a question because of, once again, there's all that in response to I'm thinking of, because I'm in conversation with the new age woman every day and I'm thinking and I'm like, it confuses me because that is the right way as you say it, but then there's another woman on the other hand would say, I actually want that negative thing you said. It's like, don't tell me. Some of them, I've literally seen them say this and say, I want a man who says, we're going here, get dressed, don't say anything. But I think the balance is they want that probably bi-monthly. Like when you know what I mean? Like you said, you don't do that every week. That's demanding and demonstrative.
Okay, so I'm going to be really tricky. Now, this doesn't come necessarily from nice guy work. This comes from psychotherapy. If you say to me, I want you, if a new age woman said to me, or an old age woman, or whatever woman says to me, I want a man who just tells me what to do, we can talk about that. And I can agree to tell her what to do. And that's okay because it was freely chosen. It's kind of like kinky sex. It's kind of, if you think about like S&M or dominance and submission, as long as both people are agreeing to it, then it's okay. Then it's not psychological enforced dominance. It's an agreed upon arrangement.
Consensual, that's the big word, consent.
Yep.
Okay. So, and to pivot to the next point, it goes into the word that popped up as you were speaking was manhood. So, and especially with the men you're talking to. Could you give even short or long, leave it up to you, leave it open-ended. Could you give, if there's a difference, the definition to manhood, what is manhood? And if there's a separation, what is your definition of manhood? What is it to be a man?
Well, I would say, what is it to be an integrated man, as opposed to a nice guy or an aggressive jerk, or I mean, there's biologically male, but that's not what we're really talking about. We're talking about the goal of psychological growth. We're talking about the goal of becoming an integrated male, and what that means is something like it has a lot to do with self-acceptance. It has a lot to do with emotional honesty. It's about standing up for yourself, but not to control others. It's to control yourself, to make yourself happy, and to be a good partner for everybody around you. And to make the world a better place, not a worse place, through your actions.
So there's this idea or ideal. Last time we misspoke. We had the misunderstanding of when we recorded. I had to bring this up in this information. I don't know if it's referenced in Mr. Glover's book. I think he did speak on, but alpha male. We spoke about the good old alpha male and that ideal, and I think that we talked about it. It gets misconstrued a bit, like enormously, demonstratively. Would you say could there be a nice guy who's an alpha male? Is the alpha male completely not the opposite of a nice guy? Have you met nice guys who are alpha males?
No. Well, let's pull apart alpha male for just a second. Alpha male, the concept comes from zoology. It comes from animal observation, and so it operates well in certain animal groups, like the great apes, for example. In human culture, our culture is a lot more complex. And so we may, for example, be alpha males. We may be nice guys with our primary partners, but more alpha at work. We may be, there's an old joke that goes, man goes to work, he's the president of the company. He comes home, he's the vice president. So you could be different in different realms. Some people are the same in every realm, but some people are different. And then also, because human society is much more complex, you might not, the term alpha male might not be applicable in certain situations. You could be natural leaders, but you could be lower on the hierarchy. In the military, for example, or in a martial arts dojo, you could be a green belt but have a strong personality, where the black belt is weak. Same thing could happen at work. These things are very, very complex, or on a sports team. Lots of things are much more complex than they are where you could go simple alpha male.
Yeah.
Having said that, I don't see a lot of kind of nice guys with strong leadership capabilities, because they are always trying to make other people happy. And that even if they are assigned a leadership role, their leadership tends to be diffuse. There's different kinds of leaders and different kind of leadership styles, but the nice guy leadership style tends to be diffuse, and the leader tends to be too concerned with the feelings of other people to really become an efficient leader.
That end part is my part, because in every job I've been in, and I was in the Army for 4 years, and at the latter point, that last year, they was trying to push me up into a supervisory role, and I just kept negating it. And I think that was the nice guy in me. It was like, there has to be there should be a middle ground in the point between management and, because I've met a lot of managers who just manage the work, and I'm gonna say that's wrong. You have to manage people who do the work. So you have to know personality management. There's a lot of managers who don't do that. You have to manage multiple personalities. Like, this person isn't effective in the way of you just screaming out, "Hey, we have 50 things to do today, and y'all better get it done by 4 o'clock." Somebody just didn't hear you. They're not connecting with you. I mean, I don't know. You can speak to it.
Okay, so what I would say, and what I've read, is that there are different leadership styles, and each one works best in a different situation. So in an early planning stage of a project, you want a leader who is open, is a real people person, can hear can take ideas, is very democratic. Later on, as things start to generate, you want to be a little bit more task oriented. When you're under the gun, you want the no bullshit sergeant who says, come on guys, this is the 2-minute drill. I don't have time for your feelings. It's like, you're in the Army, right? Well, when you're in training and you're learning and here's how we read maps and stuff. But when you're in a battle and they're firing at you, I don't have time for your feelings. Kill the son of a bitch.
Okay.
So different leadership, different situation. Everything is situation dependent.
And to revert back to the relationship aspect of the nice guy, like you said, there's a time to be demonstrative, there's a time to be directive. For women likes that, so on and so forth. But as far to get to the last thing of the alpha male, to move forward, because I want to go into your practice and how you attack certain things, and I want to know your style in specific. Okay, so as far as that, would you, just like the nice guy, I guess there are positives and negatives to being an alpha male. But the confusion I come with when especially in the relationship realm, when women say they want it, there's a confusion in it once again of the whole gender role thing and being an alpha male. Who's gonna take lead? Who's not? And you already explained that in saying it's not a take lead. It's all about compromise.
It's not compromise. It's more like negotiation, which is not necessarily compromise. In other words, I say to you, let's go have Chinese food. If you say, okay, then we're going to go have Chinese food. That's not a compromise. That's an agreement. And so, but we could wind up compromising if there is a disagreement.
Okay, you just explained that. I was going to say is, because growing up, I've heard a lot of elders saying marriage is basically compromise. You're gonna have to learn that's it. That's all it is from day one. It's two people from different, and whatever they're from, coming together, different ideals, and coming together like every day. All you're gonna have to do is compromise. But you clean it up. You clean it up clearly. All right, I couldn't think about what I wanted to ask about the alpha male, so I want to get straight to. You don't have to give anything up, but your practice about.
One of the things about alpha, the idea of alpha, is that must be betas and gammas and deltas and things like that. And I don't think that way. Here's what I think. I think this is me, and this comes in where you were talking about taking the lead, right?
Yeah.
To me, taking the lead is not I lead and you follow. It's I'm going to take the lead in putting out what I want. You can choose to put out something different, or you can choose to agree. That's up to you. So my leadership is I try it's strong but democratic at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yes.
In other words, I say to you, I want Italian food, but I'm not insisting on it.
Yeah.
And I'm not making you have Italian food. And I am open to hearing, I want Chinese food. That's okay.
It's inclusive. You include, like you said, being democratic. So the most popular podcast in the world, Joe Rogan's podcast, when this came up, he had an individual who he's a part of a content creation company on YouTube, and they attacked it. It was it's called Something Destroys Some Popular Social Construct. And he went on Joe Rogan's podcast and he talked about that. And to me, it seems like Joe Rogan is one of those guys who grew up with this ideal. The old school grown up man does this, he fights, he can protect, he's the protector and provider and all that. And he described a scenario to which where a guy, the bar scene, right? Guys who are single, they go to bars, get women. He says a guy goes into the bar with another guy, all the women are attracted to him. He's saying, you tell me this 6'5" guy who's 206 pounds, has a six pack, and he's curating the rooms where all the women like him, they're laughing and so much. And you're telling me this other guy who is only alpha male in this other instance, you're telling me those women aren't attracted to him? You telling me that's not an alpha male? The other guy retorted with saying, well, you changed the scenario into which where the other guy who's like maybe 5'7", a little chubby, where he's comfortable, those women who like that certain subject matter in that area, he will then be the one who they're either attracted to or leaning towards. I think that's what you're saying. It's subjective and scenario based. I think this ideal that America is attached on with this whole alpha male thing, of this is the guy who's gonna get the women or who's gonna be essentially gonna be the manager. That's not it. It's subjective. It's really scenario based. I think that's what I'm getting.
Right. I think that's right. And if I can think about the scenario that you just laid out, if it's a bar scene, the guy who is 6'6", 260 with a six pack, he's automatically going to do better. Because in a bar, it's noisy, people are there, so you can't, it's not like you're going to have a discussion about, impressionist art in a bar. So a guy who, I can still remember, I was in a bar in New York and there were two guys and they must have been they walked in, they must have been 6'8" or 6'9". They were rugby players and I'm 5'4". And I just looked at them and and there were other people in the bar like that. I walked out of the bar. I don't have to try to compete, but I don't meet women in bars. I meet women in other places. So I'm not going to go to a place where I'm automatically less desirable than I meet women at wine tastings and museums and hikes and yoga classes and stuff like that. I don't have to compete with the guy who's 6'6" and 260 because I don't go to a disco or a bar.
Is that so? I'm thinking, is that kind of it probably is practical. My right brain says that practical, but I gotta ask, is that practical? It's like, would you tell every how should we, I don't want to just call them nice guys, every healing nice guy that you just should always go to places where you feel comfortable? Because there's sayings in life where growth doesn't happen in comfort. Gotta step outside the box. So how could they mediate? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I agree with that statement. You have to step outside the box. But even, going to a place where there's a lot of places outside the box. Most boxes are pretty small. So a bar might be outside the box, and so might be a museum, the ballet, a yoga class, a hike in the hills, a wine tasting, and a book club. They're all outside the box. But ask yourself, which one are you going to do better in? You don't have to choose the one you'll do worst in.
Gotcha. Okay, that clears that up. So, and I guess you can speak on your practice or the groups that you have with the nice guys. if you could give, because I want people to read the book and read your workbook with your forward. That's where they're going to get the information. But whatever small tidbit or advice in this moment you give, what's working with these healing Mr. Nice Guy? And I want to know in them, not just the book, in the groups, like what do they gravitate to that the switch hits? Like, oh, what kind of style of either therapy or group therapy are you doing that's getting this to click to guys to say, all right, this may not be the way for me. Being a nice guy really isn't the way.
Well, the guys that are joining my group already know being a nice guy isn't the way for me. They've all read Dr. Glover's book.
Oh.
Dr. Glover sold hundreds, thousands of copies of his book. So there's lots and lots and lots of guys out there who've read his book, and they know I'm a nice guy and it isn't working. And they all have the same question. So how do I get from where I am to where I want to be? How do I get from clueless nice guy to strong, powerful, integrated male without being an asshole along the way? And so then if they find their way to me because they read my workbook or they picked it up and they saw the exercises and they or they went to a workshop or they heard a podcast interview with me, then they come to the group or they start, because my groups you can't join in the middle because it's kind of like an expeditionary force, or Jason and the Argonauts. You get on the boat leaves shore. That's it. Who's ever on the boat is on the boat. Who's ever not on the boat is not on the boat. That's it. So it's a group cohort, like a squad in the army out on recon. That's it. We're out there in the jungle. Yeah. That's the end. That's the end of it. And what's working in the group is that it's a combination of the feedback they're getting from me doing the exercises, the feedback they're getting from the other guys and the cohort that's kind of supporting them, and then the particular exercises themselves that are helping guys to get more in touch with their own emotions, more in touch with their own desires, stopping doing a lot of the things that don't work and starting to do things that work better. Okay. So, for example, if you were in my group and you were talking to me about, hey, in my marriage, I just tried to make her happy, but it didn't work. But the alternative is like, I'm going to be the alpha male, but that doesn't feel right either. And like, what do I do? Now we can talk about assertiveness and honoring yourself while honoring somebody else. And people kind of get that along the way.
So I wrote down EQ. And so a lot of men, a lot of men are, I like to say, emotionally disassociated. There's a disconnect from own emotions. And a lot of people, I think it's disingenuous for people just to say, get in touch with your feminine side. Emotions are worldly. There's a list of emotions. It's not just being within your own feminine energy. It's you learning and understanding when the emotion hits and then what to do with it. So what have you seen, even in your practice, if you're in your practice with a man who you would say has a low EQ? What does that man look like, but what is some of his characteristics? What's his story? How would he usually raised? Is it single parent home? What has affected them? Because I think in our country there's a hard drive to say, you're wrong, you need to do this, you need to do this to get up to speed, because this is how society is. And I think with men is like, in my dating phases, a lot of women in general say, y'all aren't communicative, you don't open up. I'm like, there's a reason for that. And it's you as a woman coming at me like that saying, you're not this and you need to be this. How are you gonna expect me to do what you're asking? It's like, you don't. So how could people learn about men's lack of EQ? What does it stem from? I don't want to just say, why are we like this, but you know what I mean?
So I'm going to turn this whole thing on its head here for a second.
Okay.
To begin with, I teach classes on emotions, and I'm working on a book on EQ. So this is actually a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. Here's the bad news. Men have pretty low EQs. Here's the good news. Men's EQs are no lower than women's.
Oh. I mean,
and it's just that they're emotionally stupid in different ways.
Okay, somebody started writing, but before, I don't want to stop your train of thought, but society, I think what I say is women, you might be right. It might be the same level. It's just they are given the free space and space in their own selves and their inner matrix to express it.
Yes and no. Yes and no. When a woman says to you, and I'm going to use the example you gave, a woman says to you, you need to be more this and you need to be more that. That's an emotionally stupid thing to say on her part. That's a low EQ statement.
Ooh.
Why? Because she's not expressing her feelings. She's telling you how you need to be. She's not telling you what her emotional experience is. She is neither expressing her emotional self-awareness nor empathy for your position. All she's doing is dominating you and trying to control you.
So I may have worded it different because, in today's world, being PC is, you have to be. So let me give a better phrase what a woman actually would say.
Okay.
Let me go. I'll be transparent when you say personal. My ex-wife, she would say something to the effect of, I would like you to open up more. We need to communicate. When certain things happen, like let's say if we would disagree, certain things happen, you just stonewall me. I would say I'm a stonewaller. And we're not getting anywhere like that with. She would say, you need to communicate more. You're bad at communicating.
Okay, so those are emotionally stupid statements. You are bad at communication. I didn't hear one statement from the theoretical ex-wife here about how she feels.
To be what's the word? Not to say there are women who do that. There are women who say, I don't feel like you're opening up to me.
No, that's a trick. Okay, so there's a joke. There's an old joke. A couple comes to therapy, couples counseling, and they're talking about something, and the woman says to the husband, "Gee, you are such an idiot," and the therapist goes, no. This is therapy. We talk about how we feel. And she thinks about that. And then she turns back to the husband and says, I feel you are an idiot. It's still not a feeling. A feeling is I'm sad, glad, mad, guilty, ashamed, excited, scared, all of this stuff, right? Could also be something like, hey, I feel I've got this feeling in my stomach. I'm queasy. I'm like, or it feels like kind of cold between us, or hot, or okay, fine. When we say I feel you are an idiot, all that is a synonym for an opinion. I am of the opinion that you are an idiot, or you are acting like an idiot, right? And then there's another tricky one, which is I feel judged, or I feel neglected, I feel forgotten. Well, they're not feelings either. They are interpretations of an interaction, which is I experience our interaction as you are judging me now. So how do you feel about that? Oh, well, I feel hurt, I feel angry. Okay, great. Now we are at feelings. So in your scenario with the women, I didn't hear one feeling. Not one. Not a single one.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to give one more example, and if I get it wrong, I want you to just tell us what's a way to extend to either our partner, male or female, of trying to get how we feel. Let me see. What else would you say?
It's all right. Wait a minute. Let me just do, in the interest of time. I'm now your wife, okay? And I'm going to say, and in that scenario, I'm going to say, look, Isaiah, I'm feeling frustrated. I'm trying, in my experience is that I'm trying to communicate with you, and I'm not getting anything back that I can really use. And that makes me frustrated in the moment. And because it keeps going on, I feel despairing. Like I feel like I want to give up because I don't know how to reach you, and I don't know how to, and I'm aware that you may feel under siege. And so, or you may feel scared, and that's why you're not giving me anything back. But, and it may be something else, I don't know. But I have to say that for me, it's not working, and I feel a real barrier between us. I experience a barrier between us, and I'm feeling all alone.
Okay, so on the flip side, let's get.
So no, I just want to say one thing. Want to point something out, which is, I'm not telling you to change. You must change. I could take that as the next step, which is to say, if this I'm going to need you to communicate better. I don't know how that's going to work. We can work on it together. But if you don't start, if our communication doesn't improve, it probably means the end of this relationship.
Okay, so to give to credit, to not be super biased and give credit to women, let's say the women who either do that in some capacity or do that completely. I'll be honest, let's be honest, there are some men who aren't receptive to that, who aren't comprehensive and don't accept and receive that. The men who do have low EQ, what is a way for that man, what are some practical ways for that man to be receptive? Because for me personally.
So now we're turning around, now I'm the man.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna say, wow, the first thing I'm gonna try to do, if I wanna be really responsive, is I'm going to ask myself how I feel. I'm not going to respond to the specifics. I'm going to say, when you said that, I started feeling scared. I had two sets of feelings. On the one hand, I felt very scared. But on the other hand, I also felt a little sense of hope that maybe if we work together, I can try to, and maybe I can get some help, and maybe I can learn better communication and learn better emotional communication. Then there is hope that our relationship can get better, because I have to tell you, I don't want to break up. I love you. And I don't want to end our relationship simply because we're struggling with communication. I want to make this work.
So I'm gonna get to that point. But for some men, I think there's a blockage. I don't believe there's a male and female brain, but I think there's like an innate blockage to men, to how we could even start attacking this conversation and amongst each other. My first thought was, how can men raise our EQ with each other? Like, to an extent where it's just not like, it's not feminine to be emotional. It's a human trait. You know what I mean?
I have to say, the other day I was being interviewed on a podcast, and it was a group, several people in it. The hosts were two African American women, and everybody else on the show was African American except me. And I was surprised to hear, because somebody talked about how, well, men are not supposed to feel, but one of the women, who was a therapist, said, you know something, that isn't true anymore. more and more, when I talk to men, they say, I want to feel. I don't want to be some kind of closed off rock. I don't want to be John Wayne or Sylvester Stallone. I'm not Rambo. I'm a guy who wants to function in the world. I want to be in touch with my feelings. I want to share with other people.
I was just, before you said that, I was going to ask, what could be the reason why men's EQ is so short? And I was thinking like media. There's another guy who I look at a podcast and he's like, we as the men who are healing and integrating and becoming comprehensive, we need to be out in the media and shift what this idea of older people have the idea of what a man is. Like you said, the John Wayne and Superman, I guess you could say, what Superman looks like him. But I'm trying to get to what could be a more practical.
You have to understand what EQ is. EQ is not one thing. EQ is a set of skills. And there are some big categories. There's probably 16, 18, 20 small categories. But of those categories, there are 3 that are bigger than any others. And they are: 1, emotional self-awareness, which is how do I feel at any given moment in time. 2, empathy, which is how does the other person feel. And 3, emotional self-management, which has to do with feeling my feelings and not going either crazy, overreacting, nor underreacting, which is 98% of people. 98% of people, the problem is not overreaction, or 98% of the time, or 95% of the time. It's not overreaction, it's underreaction. It's shutdown.
Oh.
It's stonewalling.
Yep.
It's dismissing. It's walking away. It's pretending that it doesn't matter. It's unawareness.
I think that's okay. That word, it sums up. I think as men we weren't unaware, but we just weren't in tune of being. And I don't like the phrase "get in touch with your feminine side." I don't know how you feel about that. I think
forget it. Just forget it.
I think it's human traits. I think it's this whole. I think in between my community, there's a huge sex war going on between the men and the women that we just aren't clicking. We aren't understanding each other. I think the disconnect as far as this Mr. Nice Guy thing and why I wanted to have this interview and why I wanted you to spell it out and give out either some science and some real world facts is that we aren't really listening to each other. Even though this new age thing is happening and I'm proud and I'm trying to be a part of it by doing my podcast, I think on the more part of men, there's more listening happening, but to be real about it, I think it's met with some type of aggression and some type of static. I think the societal norm for men is that I hate, and to be transparent, I hate the phrase protector and provider. I want to talk about that. Here's why I don't like women who praise the protector and provider so much. I did a video on it, but to be more specific, there's a rhetoric that comes from it. I believe the rhetoric behind that comes from a 50s era of the man being protector provider. What I hear and what I've known is far from my dad, from him being, I think he was born in 53. The protector and provider looks like a man who goes to work, grinds his bones down to dust, works in these coal mines, works in the GM and the Ford factory. And when he comes home, he has a housewife who just cooks for him, he eats, and he just sits on the recliner and watches TV. That's what I hear. The rhetoric behind protector provider is a man who just works himself to the bone, takes care of everyone in the house, and what he likes and cares about, we don't care. We as a society don't care. We don't ask you to feel or care. What we're asking you to do is to protect and provide. That's why I hate that. And as soon as I exclaim that, women say, "Oh, you're not a man. That's not a real man. Are these the new men of the century? Is that the new millennial man? And is that what y'all teaching the young, the Gen Z and Gen Alpha? We're killed. Our community is gonna be distraught." I'm like, But at the same time, as you just said, a therapist says there's men who want to feel, and there's women who make the claim as to y'all need to open up more. We need you guys to open up and communicate. We have to create. So which is it? I mean, from your perspective, and from would you say you come from the generation of protector and provider? Did you hear that growing up?
Yes and no. I come from that generation. I come from your father's generation, and so I'm very familiar with what the 50s was like. But at the same time, I was a radical in the 1960s, and I was sort of at ground zero for the women's movement in America, which it turns out ground zero was like Rutgers University, Douglas College in 1969, and I was there, it was kind of New York and this one college, and so I was feminized very early, and there was also a lot of liberation movements on campus. There was a Black Power movement, there was a Black liberation movement, there was a gay liberation movement, and this was, 1968, 1969. So very, very quickly, I was embracing alternative ideas. And so while I rejected the protect and provide, because what it said was there is only one right role for a man. And what goes along with that is there's only one right role for a woman. The woman's place is in the home, having babies and cooking dinner. And so while I recognize that for hundreds of years that has been the traditional roles, and has even in non-industrial societies where men go out and hunt the wild animal and the women grind the corn, we're past that. We don't live in that kind of world anymore. I'm happy to say we live in a world where a much wider array of roles are available to both men and women, and they can be freely chosen. And so I'm going to choose the role I want, and I want my partner to choose the role that she wants. We'll figure it out.
That's the overall.
In my relationship, both of us work, but I do all the cooking because I love to cook. And I try to put out what I want, but I don't tell her what to do. If it makes her feel safer to go along with what I want, okay, that's okay. But she gets to freely choose that.
That's one of the fights I have that I had to grow and learn in, is that one of the things I hate personally is hypocrisy, right, or contradiction. And sometimes when I meet, and you said spoke of feminists, there's the new age. I might need to stop saying that, but there's the younger women who have found feminism and they align with it. There could be some things seen as hypocrisy and contradiction when they bring up gender roles. So they want the man to be the protector and provider and do his gender roles, but they get to pick and choose which gender roles they get to execute. And so that's what I had to deal with in my marriage was, she was fine with doing most of all things, but one thing she would not do was take out the trash. And I had to sit back and think, it's like, why is it this one thing? This is psychological, real. I'm like, why you just won't do that? You'll do whatever I would do as a man, but you won't take out the trash. Before I keep going, she has that right. I had to learn that. People could be hypocrites all they want. It's their right. You live in America, you pay your taxes, you be hypocritical all you want. You can be contradictory all you want. You have that right, that's fine. I no longer get hung up on that. But for this, in this specific space, I'm like, why just you want, it has to be done. Are you just gonna leave it in the house and let the house stay? Is that what we're doing? And she literally said to me, I won't forget it. I can't say it verbatim, but she says, I grew up in a household where the men did that. No woman in the house literally touched the trash. You just don't do that. And if it's not be taken out when he gets home from work, he'll get out. And then he can come back in the house. I'm like, but with all this new age feminism, you guys, you can work, you want equality everywhere else. But in the home, it's time to pick and choose and cut it up. I'm like, that's not what you guys are fighting for. But I guess if you were there, is feminism a part of that? Because from what I know, it was all about voting and working.
No, that sounds like something different. It sounds more, I mean, not to trivialize it, but it sounds like an idiosyncrasy. Like, I got to tell you, when I was a kid, I had a mother who was like really kind of crazed and obsessed about her antique house, and she made everybody in the entire family work on the house. And I somehow got assigned a lot of cleaning. And I hated it. And I just was traumatized by a vacuum. I don't like cleaning bathrooms. But she wouldn't let anybody cook. So I love to cook. So there are things, there was something going on with your wife. I don't think that either she or you got to the bottom of it. Somehow it means something to her that she not take out the trash. And I don't know what it means to her, but it sounds more psychological than political.
For sure. Well, I was trying to get us to go to therapy, and I just couldn't. It didn't work out because I knew that, because like I said, it's odd, this one thing. Like, do all this other stuff, but any one thing. But anyway, okay. So the last question I do want to ask you to wrap it up, I like the word comprehensive and integrated. And so to sum it up, let people know, what is an integrated male? What does he look like? What does he do? What does he say? How does he act?
Well, it's a broad thing, because comprehensive and complex and integrated, it means self-accepting. It means emotionally intelligent. It means aware of how I feel and what I experience. It means that I put out what I feel, what I want. I assert my sense of self, who I am. I stand in the vulnerability of that. I say, this is what I want. I'm not hiding it. Here's how I feel. I'm not hiding it. I can set good boundaries. There are consequences if you cross my boundaries. I'm not here to dominate you, but I'm not going to let you dominate me. I lead my life. So taking the lead is not necessarily taking the lead for other people. It's taking the lead in my life. I lead my life. I stand up for me. I am honest. I'm a man of my word. If I say I'll do something, you can count on it. And if I say I'm okay with something, you can take my word at face value. It's about being straightforward, honest, caring, loving to others without dominating them, but also loving to myself and taking care of myself, not sacrificing to make other people happy.
I'll let that soak in for a second. Thank you so much, Doctor. I'm gonna get it right, Dr. Pariser.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for your time. I think this is highly important. I'm gonna try to do my best to do you justice, do Mr. Glover justice, because I love the book. I got the workbook. It's a working in progress. I do the practice almost every day. Not to say I'm in contact with a lot of women all the time, because I'm trying to get into my own space and self-heal, but I have scenarios where I'm trying to do that. But again, thank you. Usually I do this. Usually people have their social media and whatnot. I'm going to open for you to let people know. I just Googled your name. It's like, you right. There's a podcast where it's like Humans in Love. I'm literally looking at it right now. So I know you're pretty. People could probably just Google you. You're pretty astute and popular. But I want to give this space to let you know where people can find you, people can find the book. You said a couple of things you're up to with the groups. Let people know where they can find you for the groups. I think that's imperative for men.
Mm-hmm. So I don't use a lot of social media because I don't trust it very much, but I do have a website, which is drparisertherapy.com, spelled DR like doctor, and then my last name, PARISER, therapy.com. And if you go there, there is a page called The Hero's Journey that talks about the groups. And I have two ships have sailed, and there's another one that I may have just filled because the ship has a maximum of 8 seats. Oh, and so because these are small, intense groups, you can't have too many people. I'm also I may or may not do a 4th group. Right now I've got everybody into the 3rd group, where we're about to set sail in early November. I do a monthly workshop on Meetup which is on meetup.com, and if you go to my website and contact me, I can tell you how to get onto that one. But it's called the Remasculators No More Mr. Nice Guy, and so that I've been off for the summer, but I'm going to get that back up and going again. So
okay.
But the groups are weekly and 2 hours long, and they're very intense, and everybody gets to do the exercise and talk about the exercise and talk about what's going on in their life and have like a mini therapy session with me, and also interact with the other guys. So it's very intense and very helpful.
I would highly recommend if they get some personal time with you.
Oh, they do. Everybody does every week.
Okay. Personally, I want to say thank you. I might even look into some of that myself. I've been looking into group therapy myself. Before, I used to live in CTAC myself. I wanted to say that I was looking for group therapy out there because I wasn't in contact with a lot of men. I got disassociated from men. I was a nice guy who got absorbed into my wife. I was like, I gotta be there for my wife because I was in the Army at the time. They kept taking me away, and so my time with her, I was just absorbed. I was like, gotta spend 22 hours with my wife because of the makeup for that time. And now it's kind of hard for me to make male relationships now because of that. I got not traumatized, but it got affected. So I might look into that. But thank you again. I don't want to take up too much of your time, sir. Thank you. I thank you all for whoever's watching. I'm gonna put all your information definitely in the YouTube and the links and all that comments. Right. You know, the podcast, those.
The book. Can I show a copy?
Please.
So this is what the book looks like, and it's available on Amazon. It is available on Audible. It's available on Barnes and Noble. This is the workbook. I recommend you the workbook or the Audible version, which comes with kind of a supplemental material that you can write in. I think the ebook, it's a working book, so I'm not sure how good the ebook is as a medium, but it's in 3 different mediums, print, ebook, and Audible. So anything you want.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, sir. Everyone, go check out the book. Check out his information. Go to the website. I hope you all got some informative information today. Be well and be healthy. Dr. Pariser, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Bye.